Before the video starts, I just want to say I have a public official Discord server that you can join right now. Link is down in the description. It's soon to be a complete cesspit hell site that I'm probably going to have to delete, but in the meantime, come and join. Also, I am back on Twitter as well, so follow me on there for updates on videos and quirky memes. Now, Bruce Willis is an actor that we have all heard of. You ask any boomer what their childhood hero was, and 9 times out of 10, they'll say Bruce Willis. Personally, Bruce was like a little bit before my time. My childhood heroes were George Lopez from Shark Boy and Lava Girl, No Face from Spirited Away, and any role that Paul Dano is in. Because Paul Dano acts so close to an actual real-life incel, I can't help but watch him and say, oh my god, literally me.
You hide him?
No.
How'd you hide him? Do you tie him up? Do you tie him up?
Also, if you do enjoy this video, consider subscribing. It's totally free, and if you do, there's a higher chance I won't have to put this garbage intro at the start of every video. Bruce started off doing stage plays in the 70s, and then a TV show called Moonlighting, but what really set his career is in the 80s, when he starred as the main character John McClane in Die Hard. Now, Die Hard is amazing and considered, even though it's a bit of a weird theme, one of the best Christmas films of all time. It's weird as well because when you think of a Christmas film, you think of something like The Polar Express.
You coming?
Where?
Alabama!
Or the Grinch film with Jim Carrey, where people get that one scene of him screaming at the camera and they put an Instagram caption over it. The thing is, the role of John McClane, Bruce wasn't even the first choice for it. It was originally Sylvester Stallone or Arnold Schwarzenegger, but both ended up turning the role down. And this is actually really common in Hollywood, where actors are given roles, but they turn them down only for a smaller actor to pick them up, and the film bangs. Like, for example, The Matrix. It's synonymous with Keanu Reeves and his acting. Now, that role was originally offered to Will Smith, but turned it down, citing that the Wachowskis didn't pitch the film properly.
Then we're gonna invent these cameras, and then people can see the whole jump while you stop in the middle of the jump. So I made Wild Wild West.
If you don't know what that film is, you actually have a chance of a normal life. I would stop watching the video now and go outside and touch some grass.
Touch them.
I'm not touching those things.
What, are you afraid you're wrong? Touch my breast. Just one. Touch one.
Okay. You happy, Gordon? I'm touching your breast.
But yeah, in this timeline, Bruce got the role of John McClane, and it's a really good film. I mean, I don't really need to give you the synopsis. It's got Professor Snape in it from Harry Potter. That's all you need to know.
We do it the hard way.
No, sir.
Also, the film was so good that they made a sequel that is literally the exact same film, but not as good. And then they made a third film that was totally different, but actually good. Not as good as the first film, but still pretty good. The point of me bringing this up is it shot Bruce Willis's career into stardom, or as what I call the hairline era. While he still had hair on his head, Bruce starred in some of the most profitable films ever made. You've got the I See Dead People film, Sin City, Pulp Fiction. And not to mention The Fifth Element. And I'm going to say that is a hill I'm willing to die on. The Fifth Element is a good film. People think I think it's a good film, okay? He even appeared in every white woman's favorite show, Friends, and only appearing for 3 episodes, he still snagged a Primetime Emmy for Best Guest Actor. But then, something started to go wrong. He was still appearing in blockbuster films that were making huge profits, but the films weren't really that good. And I think, ironically, a real turning point was the film Surrogates, a film where Bruce plays an avatar of himself that has hair, but he wakes up in the real world and has no hair. And this is what I call the molding era. This wasn't necessarily a terrible era for Bruce, just very mediocre. He was still bringing in amazing money, but the films were panned by critics. Like, for example, Die Hard 4, not a terrible film, just not really anything of note. And this is when Bruce started to turn down films because they weren't paying him enough. For example, The Expendables, a film franchise that got all your favorite action boomer stars of the 70s and 80s together in one ensemble cast. Bruce was in 2 of these films, and to appear in a third film, he wanted $3 million for only 4 days of shooting, but he turned the role down because he wanted 4. He was offered 3/4 of the cut and still walked away. And the reason why I'm mentioning this, it led to Sylvester Stallone, his co-star, having a complete mental breakdown on Twitter, just roasting him. You're fucking dead! I think this was like a time before quote tweeting was a thing as well. It was just pure rage.
Willis out, Harrison Ford in. Great news. Been waiting years for this.
4 exclamation marks.
Greedy and lazy. A sure formula for a career failure.
Now, even though I was a prime age for these films, I kind of skipped all of them. I've never watched a single Expendables? Avengers? Honestly, as a kid, the only thing I knew Bruce Willis for was appearing as a guest star in like a Gorillaz music video. And that music video features one of the most feminine revolver reloads I have ever seen from a man. Now, not to say Bruce didn't care about his roles at this point. He wasn't a soulless shill. There were still films that he appeared in that were good, like Looper, for example. And not to mention Wes Anderson's Moonrise Kingdom, where he plays the only policeman on this small island. And much like Die Hard, you could tell that he was actually in a good role in this film and he cared because he miraculously grew his hair back. Now, even though he's known as an action star, it's obvious that Bruce was competent in roles outside of the action genre. Even if he was in absolute stinkers like Lay the Favorite, a comedy film that only made $1 million against its $20 million budget. Eventually, he'd return to his more conventional roles like a 5th installment of Die Hard. And even though the film sucked and everyone agrees that it's the worst film yet in the franchise, you know, he got to play a character 25 years later. And I think regardless of quality, that's really humbling for him. Now, in 2012, Willis was the 8th highest grossing actor for that year. But 2015 onwards, again, something changed. He was going back to his action roots, but these weren't good films. After 2015, it's actually really hard to find a single film that he's been in that has above 5 out of 10 on IMDb. The only real one was Glass, but you wouldn't really count that because he's got about 20 seconds of screen time in that film. He started appearing in foreign films and very low budget, straight to video demand, like The Bombing, a film where Bruce is an American army instructor teaching the Chinese how to beat the Japanese. Also, Adrian Brody? Oh, come on. They got Adrian Brody in. You were in The Pianist. And you played Jack in that King Kong video game.
2 magazines on backup. 2 magazines on backup. You all right, Hayes? 2 magazines on backup.
Now, I don't want to single Bruce out here. There are many actors that in the twilight of their career, they tend to pick these kind of garbage roles that do have a high payout. But the thing is, once in a while, these films are good, or so bad that they're good. Like, for example, Nicolas Cage appearing in a Five Nights at Freddy's film, and he has no spoken lines of dialogue. It is all just physical acting.
Have you been listening to a word I've been saying?
Well, I really like shortbread.
Now, before I get into this, it's obvious with the hindsight we have now that we know why Bruce chose these roles, mostly due to the fact of his recent aphasia diagnosis. Aphasia affects your ability to speak clearly and also understand words, among other things. There's like a running gag in the community that Bruce Willis has like an earpiece and he's being fed his lines, which is probably the truth. But in retrospect, it's kind of sad. I think worst of all, until his recent retirement, he never told anyone about his aphasia diagnosis. And this is really common in the celebrity world, hiding your diagnosis. 2 people I can think of, for example, is Chadwick Boseman and Virgil Abloh. Both had cancer, and they never actually told the public until their passing. And even though he recently came out as having aphasia, he's definitely had it for a lot longer than that. I remember nearly 10 years ago, he went on an interview for the BBC to promote his latest Die Hard film. And it's really sad because you can tell that he's being asked questions and his brain isn't really recognizing what the question is. So he goes on these weird tirades, and the audience interpret this as him making a really long-winded joke. So they're laughing at him, but they don't mean to. They're trying to humor him. But with the hindsight we have now, it's just sad to watch.
I suppose it's because you had kind of a good day, and if you would have died, well, so be it. Is that it?
That's right. That's a good question. Have a sandwich and let's go shopping.
I also remember at the time, like tabloids and stuff mocking him, and he put out an apology saying he was tired and it was jet lag, but we now know why he was like that. Now, I want to say this video isn't to mock Bruce Willis, because at the end of the day, if I'm doing that, going, oh, look how he delivered that line, Lamau, so cringe, you're just mocking someone with aphasia. Like, that's not fair and it's not funny. But what I wanted to do in this video is instead mock the terrible projects that Bruce Willis is involved in, because even without him being a part of these projects, they would be complete unwatchable dog water. But a lot of them are actually so bad that they're hilarious. There's actually a common theory going around that Bruce knew that he wouldn't be able to work in the industry for much longer because of his reading comprehension and memory loss. So he chose to attach himself to these very cheap projects. He'd roll for a couple days and then get paid a couple million just for being on set for such small little time. So he has money for his family when he retires. And I respect that. Even though these films do objectively suck, I respect that. Now, Bruce started to appear in a lot of films. Most actors appear in maybe 2 or 3 films a year if they're like incredibly tight with their scheduling, but Bruce would appear in 10 or 15 films. In 2019, he appeared in 7 films. A lot of these were just straight on-demand films like Netflix, Hulu, stuff that boomers would bizarrely watch at 3 in the morning. And Bruce would appear in these films for about 10 to 15 minutes each. And when they weren't filming Bruce, it was pretty obvious that they were just filming the back of a bald man's head, pretending to be Bruce. Now, all of these posters look the same. Like, you can just get a collage of them. It's usually 2 bald men or one that's about to go bald and then some kind of building or explosion or some kind of epic name like Death Valley Gunshot Blunderbuss. And even though he's barely in these films, he's the pull. He is the main poster boy because he gets people watching it. Now, what I wanted to do is get every bad film that Bruce Willis attached himself to and rank it, from S being the highest and F being the lowest. But first... Wow, I sure do love this royalty-free DJ set. What? Yeah, he's played nothing but Kevin MacLeod music for the past 8 hours. Sorry, I can't hear you. I'm too busy on my Opera GX browser. Oh, right. I don't know what that is, Lamau. What did you just say? I mean, why even use it? I just use whatever browser comes to my phone or PC. Look, I still even have Flappy Bird on my phone. How dare you? Just thought of Greta Thunberg. Walk with me for a moment. Let me teach you how you've been wrong your entire life. Now, I've already sponsored Opera before, and I'm contractually obliged to not repeat myself. I don't understand anything you're talking about. Are you a little Chrome cook? Well, look over there. Google Chrome extensions are now compatible with Opera GX browsers. You can even quick import all your settings from your previous browser, like browsing history, bookmarks, and cookies. Well, yeah, I mean, that's great and all, but I use Microsoft Edge. No one uses that. Oh, look over there. Do you see that? Oh my God, what is that? Opera GX now has custom animated wallpapers which smoothly run in the background of your browser. I know, son. We fought long and hard for a dub this fat. You know what? You've convinced me. I want to download Opera GX right now. Perfect. Take him away, boys. We need to make sure there's no trace of Microsoft Edge on his PC. Right, what was I going to say? Oh, yeah. Thanks, Opera GX, for sponsoring this video. It's like an opera, but with Wi-Fi, Lamau. Anyway, use my link down below to download Opera GX today. You can even see my latest videos on the browser if you download with my link. Goodness gracious. Add over. Now, I want to start off with 10 minutes gone. You have this guy from the Shield TV show. I think he's a bank robber here, and then his brother gets killed on the job. And when he finally meets his boss, Bruce Willis, you can tell that he deeply cares about the loss of his brother.
Sorry about your brother. It's time to get back on the clock.
I paid £2 to watch this film. I cannot believe it. Now, Bruce isn't really in this film enough to justify like a good or a bad rank. He's in like a phone call at the beginning and then like the final confrontation. He doesn't really do anything. He's kind of just this like boss in the background that you don't want to annoy, even though we never see why you should never annoy the boss. So you know what? I'm going to give it a D tier. Now, D tier is kind of mid-range. It should really be lower. You will change your mind very quickly. Motherless Brooklyn. Now, this is actually the final theatrical release film that Bruce Willis appeared in. Now, this actually has a pretty heavy B-list cast, like, for example, the average paracynical viewer, who actually wrote, directed, and produced this whole film. It's his project. And, of course, how can we forget the Green Goblin, or the shouty man from the lighthouse? Now, what does Bruce do in this film? He plays a character that gets killed 5 minutes into the film. That is not a joke. That is his death scene. He's basically only used to give Edward Norton's character motivation for the rest of the film. Again, nothing really of note. Safe film, D tier. Trauma Center. Now this one I'm going to be very critical of because instead of paying £2, I had to pay £7 to get this film. The intro CGI is actually abysmal. It looks like something from a PS2. Oh wait, it's the production company's intro. Thank goodness for that. Now, Bruce plays a cop in this film, much like Die Hard, and he has these amazing scenes, like, for example, talking to his co-star, and they're obviously just filmed on different days, and they're not even talking to each other, because we never get a scene of these two people together.
I'm ignoring you, Tony.
Not today, Steve.
What are you, my stalker? I just finished a double. Can't this wait?
It can't. I just got a text from Gonzalez, our CI in the Flatlands.
Jimmy fucking Gonzo? It doesn't make sense. I talked to him today.
He's an honest cop that's trying to protect a witness who's going to be killed. The only problem is he leaves the witness completely unprotected for most of the film and then realizes, wait, my witness is going to get killed. So comes back at the end of the film to kill the bad guys. Please look at how this scene was filmed. Imagine that you sat here for an hour and a half and this was the final confrontation. Not a good film, but Bruce actually does something here apart from get killed, so C tier. Hard kill. Now, this film, unfortunately, has the exact same director as Trauma Center. Now, Bruce feels like he's in this film longer than any other film I've just talked about combined. The intro is just entirely these close-up slow-mo shots that are like really disorientating. In this film, Bruce plays a concerned father who hires a team of mercenaries to rescue his daughter, who's being held by extremists. And even though Bruce wants to help, he's given a pistol and locked in a room for like 80% of the film until he gets captured, and then he has to be rescued by the same team that he hired. I really don't mind this film. It's got one of the lowest IMDb ratings on this list, but, you know, Bruce is fine, and the extremist probably gives the worst performance in the entire film.
Don't tell him.
Fine. I'm sorry.
No. Don't tell him.
No. I'll give you the goddamn code.
I was gonna give it like a C, but that performance alone, E tier. I also love how that entire film takes place in that industrial like complex. It looks like Foundry in Halo 3 if they just made like a 2-hour film inside of it. Survive the Night. Now, this is another film from the same director and the same company. Do you notice a trend yet? If you didn't, this film also begins with a slow, grainy montage, just like the last film. Now, in this film, Bruce plays the son of a disgraced physician who's contacted by two robbers when one of them gets shot during a convenience store holdup, and they want him to remove the bullet. They take the people into their home, and things get a little bit messy, hence the title. The thing is that this film is seeped in this sepia tone, and it looks like any American show ever set in Mexico. I don't like this film. It's one of my least favorites. The only redeeming feature of it is Bruce Willis gives this very important line.
And now, the piece de resistance, authentic vegetarian lasagna.
Thank
I got the recipe off the internet.
No, the camera is still rolling. Stay in character.
This part doesn't include Bruce, but the setup for the film, there's a shootout in a convenience store, and it is just horribly shot.
Sons of bitches! Motherfuckers!
The only way I can compare is almost like when you play a video game and you've got so much reckless abandon because you just know you're going to respawn if you get killed like 2 seconds later. Anyway, Bruce tries to kill the thugs while one is having a bullet removed, barely dodges some CGI gunshots, and then he's chased into the woods, which again is where he spends most of the film, only to come back into the house the very next day, untie woman then gets shotgun, misses point blank with shotgun. By the way, isn't that the entire point of a shotgun, to like not miss at point blank range? So someone just give her those frag rounds from Battlefield 3 that got patched like 2 days later.
Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds.
Now again, I didn't really like this film. It's kind of boring, but when the intruder gets killed, he dies right next to his brother in the same pose. How poetic. And for something that Shakespearean level, B tier. Anti-Life. Anti-Life or Breach came out in 2020, and it is just such a beautiful mess.
How you doing? You looking good.
Kill me!
Finally not directed by the guy who's done the last films, so instead of like Industrial Warehouse or House, we get the vast reaches of space. The film is set on an ark that has left Earth after a plague has basically destroyed everything. You can tell life on Earth was bad because they put a spherized effect on the entire intro montage, making it look like a Tony Hawk skating video. The ship escapes Earth, looking something like Gary's mod, and the crew goes into cryostasis with the best CGI since Age of Ultron. I love as well how, like, when they have physical sets and not CGI, it looks like actual styrofoam. Bruce plays a janitor on this ship who spends the first act of the film pretty much bullying his co-worker, making him do all the work and just drinking in front of him. Also, apparently in this universe, people have like their own separate hologram, and Bruce uses his hologram to make sure that he isn't being watched. Okay, sure.
What are you doing? You following me?
Also, did I forget to mention there are zombies on the ship? Where did they come from? I don't know. I don't care. The only reason I pointed it out is because when they have a gunfight, you've got this actor here who shakes his gun to make it look like there's actual recoil, while the guy next to him doesn't move his gun at all. Buddy, you are not getting an Oscar. Keep trying.
You thirsty, partner?
And when the entire crew get infected, save the main cast, Bruce pulls out this flamethrower, and it seems to work like a wonder gun from COD, like it physically pushes them back, as opposed to just setting them on fire.
I'm out of juice.
And then the characters have this amazing realization. Wait, why are we the only ones left? Oh yeah, Lamau, because everyone else is in cryo. So they go to cryo and release everyone, and they're all miraculously like marine soldiers that are trained in killing. And then all the zombies like combine together, kind of like, you know, John Carpenter's The Thing. It becomes this monster, and Bruce uses his pack-a-punch flamethrower to kill it until he doesn't, and he just gets like slapped across the room. But then the new guy that Bruce Willis was bullying picks up the flamethrower, finishes off the monster, and it turns into like an animated Fortnite skin. Now, this is very sad, guys, because Bruce actually dies in this film. He sacrifices himself to blow up the ship so none of the infected survive, in this effect that you only see in like EDM music videos. The new guy escapes with his girlfriend onto like a new Earth, which is just like normal Earth, but they put a blue filter on it. But oh no, there are zombies here as well. There's like a giant monster in the distance, and there's like a gunship, which implies that there's like human resistance. And then he just says burn them all as he torches this poor girl to death. She might have not even been infected. I can't tell. Overall, we get 2 servings of Bruce Willis here. Hologram Bruce Willis and Drink Coat Bruce Willis. That automatically doubles the ranking, and because of the concept and how goofy it is, A tier. Cosmic Sin. This is another sci-fi film, and it looks like a sequel to Anti-Life, but unfortunately it's not. The opening explains how in 2031 a Mars colony is formed. So apparently, realistically, we're going to form a colony on Mars within the next 9 years. Sure, buddy. We live in a world where entertainment is fueled more than space exploration, so I don't think that's happening anytime soon. Funny sidetrack here, there's this game called Prey, and it lives in a world where like JFK wasn't assassinated, so the space program got a lot more funding. But unfortunately, we don't live in that world. Instead of walking on Mars, we watch people walking around on green screens. Also, in between the exposition, we've got these action scenes of people like being dropped from orbit onto planets, and it just looks like dragging someone with a fizz gun in Gmod. It looks terrible. We learned that Bruce Willis's character, named James Ford in this film, dropped a bomb on a rebel colony, and he's referred to as the Blood General. If dropping bombs on civilians wasn't damning enough, you now know he's a bad person because he has the role Blood General. We see Bruce in a bar off duty, and this is one of the most awkward fight scenes I've ever seen. Bruce's character is called in because they've actually found for the first time alien life, and Bruce suggests, just in case, they need to prepare another bomb.
If I were you, prepare a Q-bomb.
There's this guy as well, and he's like speaking on comms, but we just saw in the previous shot he doesn't have an earpiece in. Bruce turns out to be right because everyone that came in contact with the aliens is now miraculously infected. Wait a second. This is a complete retread of the last film, isn't it? No, guys. It's different here because these zombies spit acid at people. even though you don't physically see the acid because the VFX team forgot to add it in. So there's just a sound effect and people grab their face going, ah! The worst part, and this is a problem with me, not the film, the alarm sound that they use for when the infection breaks out, it's the exact same stock alarm sound that's used in all these like ironic Instagram memes. Again, thank you, internet, for permanently ruining my humor. What the group tried to do is drop onto a neighboring planet to find where the infection is coming from so they can put a stop to it. Everyone arrives together except Bruce, who gets cut off completely on his own. Again, probably because of scheduling conflicts. He eventually meets up with his squad for one final showdown at a base, and this dialogue exchange, magnifico.
I offer you this one chance. Embrace us, or we will become you. No!
Anyway, the film ends with like the worst CGI imaginable. You can't even tell what's going on. And also, why can this infected woman be out in space? Like, okay, I get it. She's infected. Maybe like her anatomy's changed. But at the end of the day, she's still mostly human. Anyway, Bruce does this funny force push, sends the bad woman into the portal. Portal blows up. The entire universe is saved. Honestly, this film, nowhere near as good as Afterlife. Afterlife was goofy, funny, and Bruce Willis did a pretty cool sacrifice. This one's kind of boring, so E tier.
You're done. You are done.
Midnight in the Switchgrass. The caption is, can they stop a serial killer who can't stop himself? Isn't that the literal definition of a serial killer, that they can't stop themselves? Now, this film has Megan Fox in it. If you don't know who she is, she was the booba lady in the Shia LaBeouf Transformers film. Now, this film is actually double the review score of the previous film. Not great by any means, but I was expecting something watchable. The film begins with a guy exploring an underpass only to see someone's belongings left on the floor. And then he gets jump scared.
Holy crap!
We don't know what he gets jump scared by. It just plays an audio stinger and nothing else. I genuinely think it was just the loud noise that scared him. When we cut to his perspective, there's a body. Took about 20 seconds to do that. And then he reports it to the police. Now, in this film, Megan and Bruce both play undercover cops. And their first sting is Machine Gun Kelly. It's weird, like we've gone from literal Who actors to like people I actually recognize now. Like, it's so bizarre. Anyway, Machine Gun Kelly begins his acting career by being beat up to a pulp by Megan Fox. And then when Bruce Willis comes in to tell her to stop, they've like CGI'd Machine Gun Kelly's body. No, seriously, look at this body. There's something really off about it. You know, if Kelly wasn't available to be a body, they could have just got any white guy that was skinny and dressed them up and had them lie there. Like, what? Why would you CGI in a body? But you know what? I'm willing to forgive this entire scene just because they say Among Us.
We see temptation all around. Who among us is not them?
One thing I noticed in this film, even though Bruce and Megan are partners, it's very rare to see them together in the same scene. I think it happens like twice throughout the whole film. You see them in the same scene, sure, but like they're not actually in the same shot, usually showing the back of someone's head when they're talking. Again, probably another scheduling conflict. My theory is with these films, they usually hire Bruce at the very beginning or the very tail end of the project and just shoot all of his stuff in like 1 or 2 days. There's really not a lot to say about this film. It's incredibly safe and it treads that line of mediocrity. Nothing stands out. I mean, it's just another generic detective story with the serial killer. But the problem is with the serial killer, you know exactly who it is because they keep showing him every 5 minutes whenever it's not Megan and Bruce. What would have been good is if they had some kind of red herring. Like there's this other detective that isn't part of Megan and Bruce and you keep seeing him and you think, what if he's the killer? What if he's going around like covering up his own tracks? But no, he's just a nice guy as well. Anyway, the film ends with Megan being captured. You hope that she gets rescued. She doesn't, and she just kind of beats the captor herself, does everything herself. And the guy I mentioned earlier is just out in a field with a gun, doesn't do anything. And then at the end, Bruce Willis is there to collect his paycheck.
I can't leave you alone for one day.
After watching this film, I genuinely remember none of it apart from the CGI body. So, E tier, garbage. Out of Death. Now, this film actually begins with a flash forward showing Bruce Willis with a gun actually doing things, surprisingly. It's kind of hard to like process anything that's happening though because it's a literal flashbang between each cut. Now, the main premise of this film is a woman goes up to a mountain to like spread her husband's ashes. She witnesses a murder from 2 corrupt cops, films it, the cops see her, and they try and hunt her down to destroy the evidence. And then Bruce Willis comes in as this retired cop to try and help the woman out. But please, watch this scene. Watch this first scene in the film and tell me how it is not a video game. Also, shout out to the green screen overlay of heavy rainfall while she sits there completely dry, writing in her paper journal. Oh, wait, no, never mind. Only her back is wet, guys. And then in the very next scene, the wet patch on her back has moved to a completely different spot. Before Bruce can arrive to save her, she's approached by the two corrupt cops. But she escapes by biting one, and the bite does so much damage that she falls backwards and drops her gun at the same time, only for the girl to be sucker punched in what looks to be another time zone. The cops have her, and they know that they've filmed her misdeeds, and even though they're fine with killing people, they just tie her up. They think that they can usher her into silence, and she completely complies, but the thing is, the cops have won here. If they don't kill her, they can just take her phone or camera and destroy all evidence, and then, you know, it's two voices against one, and they're police. If she snitches, it's only her word as defense, and with no evidence, it's not going to go anywhere. They go to kill her anyway because the film needs tension, and that's where your boy, Bruce Willis, comes to save the day. By doing a Far Cry 3 and throwing a pebble to distract them. Now he sneaks up on them, gets the drop on them, and this is perfect. The problem is, if this was the case, the film would only be 13 minutes long. So Bruce, because of his honor, won't shoot two cops, and they use that to get their guns back and then chase them off into the woods. How many films are we going to talk about where people are like chased off into the woods, man? And this is where Bruce Willis like kind of vanishes for most of the film because he's on his own. And this sucks because I thought most of the film would be him and the woman actor, but it's not. Honestly, the standout part of this film that I really like is the relationship between the two corrupt cops. They don't take their roles too seriously and come off as complete morons. It's really refreshing to see something like this in a budget film where they're not taking themselves seriously. The only problem is the director realized he might have something that goes above a 5.0 on IMDb.
Have you seen this?
So brings out this like generic bad guy senator type who forces the male cop to kill the female one because her leg's injured. I mean, even if there's no reception, you could just carry her to the car. And the thing is, he doesn't even kill her. He kind of just like puts his hand on her chest until she stops breathing.
I have ray gun.
Fuck.
Now, near the climax of the film, the main woman, she's trying to escape the mountain and needs a car. So she goes into a woman's house that lives on the mountain, and the exchange is very passive-aggressive.
Take whatever you want. No, I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm not gonna hurt you. I promise you. I'm not here to hurt you. Stop.
But then when she gets the woman to go upstairs, you can see that she's aiming the gun at the back of her head. They eventually have this confrontation with the corrupt senator and the woman in this bedroom. Instead of witnessing like any kind of fight choreography, we just see like shadows through the drapes. And then the green screen rain that we saw earlier kicks in again. And then the senator walks out and surrenders with the gun still held behind his head. I'm pretty sure you're not allowed to do that. But yeah, it's pretty obviously a cop-out, you know, oh, the bad guy survived. Wait, no, he didn't. The woman survived. So yeah, it's a good ending. Woman lives, and so does Bruce Willis, even though he didn't really do anything apart from throw a pebble.
Oh, I'm sweating like a pig here. What?
Thing is, it's a really forgettable film, but I love the chemistry with the two cops. They're in it for about half the film, and I wish they were in it more. I really wish they didn't bring this senator character that's just like a generic bad guy wearing all black. Like, it's just so cringe. But for the two cops, I'm giving this a B tier. Survive the game or killing field. This film, Bruce is a cop yet again, and him and his buddy have like a drug bust at the beginning of the film, and they're debating whether to go through it or not. The dialogue is terrible. The exchange is terrible.
This might go south. We need backup.
What if somebody gets killed because of product they're selling?
What if you die?
What the fuck are you talking about?
I've been chasing their boss forever.
Yeah, so maybe it's time to do something different for once. You with me?
Yeah, I'm with you.
We're gonna go in after these guys. I'm not letting these guys go.
I'm with you.
All right, let's go. Come on.
I'm not even commenting on Bruce's line delivery, because if you swapped out any other actor, this exchange would still be complete garbage. I'm gonna do the thing, bro. No, bro, don't do the thing, bro. But what if you die?
Who is writing this?
A firefight starts, which leads to one of the worst intro cinematics of all time. there's something so overproduced, but also so cheap about it. It looks like they gave someone like free reign with like a 30-day trial of Camtasia. After the intro, we find out that Bruce got shot, so he'll be out of commission for most of the film. And in between that, we have this car chase that is just horrendous. Like, the interior is a green screen background, which is fine, but that's on like a professional camera. And then when it cuts to an actual outside chase, it's like a GoPro. Bruce's partner chases some of the gang into a house. And the only reason I'm even mentioning this part is because what happens next.
No.
You all need to leave.
Please, mister. He got a knife to stab a girl, and he got me in the arm. We got ourselves an odd duck in our pond, baby girl.
Let him go.
You move, pig boy, and he dies all over you.
I love this scene, and the only thing that annoys me is Bruce isn't in it. You can tell this guy just revels in this role. I'm not going to bother looking up his name. I really don't care. So for the time being, I'm just going to call him Meth Head Norman Reedus. The film's quite weird because the main character isn't actually Bruce's partner, but this guy whose house they broke into. He kind of hijacks the story and becomes like the real protagonist. Apparently he's like really depressed and sad that his girlfriend isn't with him anymore. So what he does is teams up with the cop to take out the drug dealers, so he has like a purpose to live again. It's a pretty stupid script. I mean, there's even bits with Bruce laughing in scenes because I think he's aware of just how like dumb all of this is.
Closest you guys ever came to a monarch is Elvis. And you know what they said about Elvis,
Okay,
right?
Dix, you hold your horses right there. Don't you blaspheme about the king.
Well, maybe you don't say anything about the queen.
Fine.
Deal?
Deal.
But I do want to say, I think this is one of the better films on the list because it seems that, like, how ridiculous it is, everyone's having fun here. Bruce is kind of just held captive the whole film, only ever being given dialogue to insult the people that have captured him.
Well, that was partially your fault.
You two suck. You two don't seem to be having much fun here.
They suck.
Suck.
This sucks.
This film so far has probably the worst inconsistencies, like how this guy here is shot twice and then like a final kill shot to the head, but then the people nearby, they only hear that final shot. Or this scene where the antagonist shoots someone and then the protagonist runs away and the bad guy just kind of looks bewildered like, you know you can move your arm, dude. While Bruce gets captured, most of his interactions are with this British guy and he tries to like verbally disarm him, which leads to a fight scene that like Bruce isn't even involved in. They just got a stunt double, which makes sense, but it's still hilarious. One of the clips that lives like rent-free in my head is this scene. Bruce is being shot at, he returns fire, but these two scenes look like they were filmed like 2 weeks apart.
Drop it!
Run, you idiot!
Honestly, I can't hate this film. It fully embraces that goofiness that the two cops had in that other film. I love it. And for that, S tier. Next up is Apex Predator, another sci-fi film. And this one has Neil McDonough in it, who I can only remember from Band of Brothers. Can you tell I'm recording this on a different day? Is it obvious? The bag's under my eyes. So this film does have actual talent attached to it, apart from Bruce. If you're wondering why Neil, someone who's actually a prolific actor, would appear in something like this, apparently in his own words, he was blacklisted from Hollywood for not wanting to appear in a sex scene. Now this film seems to have an entirely different production company, director and writer behind it, so hopefully it's something a little bit better. Plot twist, it's not. Now, in this film, Neil seems to be playing the antagonist. You can tell because he asks someone to fight him and then immediately shoots them after.
Hey! Shut up and fight.
The film's premise seems to be there's this island where the wealthy travel to hunt prey or poor people. It's set in the future, so everything has this cyberpunk aesthetic. I mean, cyberpunk if it was on low settings. Also, they brought the holograms back from the spaceship film Anti-Life, so callback. Now, Bruce is involved in this story because he's a prison convict, so eligible for parole if he manages to survive. He's contacted by a hologram, and it's obvious that these two people weren't exchanging lines in the same room.
Holy hell, sir, how are you still alive?
Come closer and I'll show you.
I'd never put myself in a room with a killer.
And I love the expression Bruce pulls for like half the dialogue. It looks like the smug Roblox face. She contacts him, letting him know that if he doesn't participate in the game, he's basically dead anyway. And he doesn't really seem interested until she doxes him.
Win and I can guarantee your freedom. Maybe you could settle down and visit the grandkids.
Grandkids? I don't have any grandkids.
Yes, you do. 2. Your eldest son, Michael. He and his wife welcomed a pair of twins last year. A boy and a girl.
The thing is, why would you care? He's in prison, so like he's gonna have everything on like a database or something. Why is he so surprised when like the woman says his full name? And also, he's just been told he has grandchildren, doesn't care about them, never even knew they existed, but now that is his driving force to earn his freedom. We then get a compilation of all the hunters being activated or, you know, contacted so they can participate in the game, and it's a pretty cool montage, even though it's very, very obviously stolen from the agent activation scene in The Bourne Identity. When Bruce is taught the rules of the game, he's given this kind of like quirky, ironic tutorial video, and I vibe with it. The only problem is it's a tutorial and it teaches you nothing apart from seeing a woman body someone. But Bruce parts with the important information that if he beats all of the hunters, he's free to go.
Xbox, record that.
The hunters all meet up in the starting cabin and all seem to have good chemistry, except Neil's character, who reacts the same way I do when someone shows me a 20-minute YouTube video without skipping.
Our a la carte offerings include thoroughbreds, mongrels, and dirt bikes.
Remove them all.
Sir?
We don't want the prey stealing another bike now, do we? Anybody got a problem with that?
Neil's character's entire shtick is basically to be apathetic and disinterested because he's done so many of these games, he's essentially a professional, but he won't participate as prey because he knows that that's just suicide. Before the hunters can start, Bruce is given a head start, which is obviously just another actor who was bald and they shot the back of his head. Honestly, a lot of this film is just Bruce walking around in the woods. I don't even think this is his fault. It's like the film doesn't really have an organic way to write him into the story without being a main central character. So a lot of the film, especially the first 2/3, is him just walking around the forest on his own, monologuing to himself.
Hills. Especially fuck trees. Woo.
And because Bruce is in the film so little, we don't really have any kind of conflict that he can involve himself in. So instead, the hunters start killing off each other, with Neil killing off the alcoholic.
You killed your wife.
I love my wife.
Literally seconds later, gunshots and everything, by the way, someone walks up and Neil goes, oh, I just found him like this. It was probably Bruce Willis.
It was like this when I got here.
Despite him having no gun. Thankfully, there is some level of sanity between these people because the hunter sees right through Neil and knows that he killed him. He just doesn't really care.
What's this sure doing? It is, isn't it, you cheeky fuck?
Then all the hunters like miraculously find each other, even though they're all moving solo, and they think they hear Bruce Willis. There's no twig snapping. There's nothing he steps on to give his position away. They just think they hear something, which leads to them emptying all of their ammo into a bunch of trees with really poor CGI. But don't worry, guys. Bruce actually has some input in this film. Like this one scene where he shoots a guy, misses, but then hits him and doesn't kill him. And even though there's no entry wound, he fell over. Bruce escapes again and then finds a cigar and a lighter, I guess from like a previous hunting party that was there. The only reason I'm mentioning this is because we get a montage of Bruce Willis. Not him surviving or thriving or taking on the hunters, just him walking around the woods. This music, by the way, I did not edit this music in. This is completely from the film soundtrack.
Fuck shit up. Or not.
He also eats some berries, and then he's warned by the female hologram that the radiation around the island has gave the berries like psychedelic properties. But this never goes anywhere. Like 20 minutes later in the film, he trips out for about 7 seconds. It doesn't inhibit him or cause any problems, and it's never used again. It is pointless. Meanwhile, while Bruce is doing all this, another hunter gets killed. I mean, that's pretty much all they can do with this film. Neil kills another hunter with a 50 cal, even though like the bullets are this big. And when the bullet goes into the guy, there is no exit wound at all, like no hole in the garage door or anything.
I'll see you real soon.
Who you calling vanilla?
If it wasn't apparent that Neil's character is the bad guy, what he does is collect the heads of people that he's killed, whether hunter or prey, and puts them in his office where he can just sit and drink whiskey in front of them. And if that did not communicate that he's the bad guy, he also grabs his whiskey bottle so aggressively, the VFX team added a CGI crack in the bottle. Now, there's only 2 hunters left, Neil and this guy. I have no idea who he is. But this hunter goes straight for Bruce. So, oh my god, an actual fight scene. I'm not gonna lie though, it's pretty short. Bruce just throws the tomahawk, hits the guy's artery, and he just sits there bleeding out. But Bruce has a nice side and actually lets him live.
Yeah. You good? Kid, I'm better than good. I'm bacon and eggs on Sunday morning. I never want to see you again.
Now Neil realizes he's one-to-one with Bruce, so he pulls out his trap card and calls in a bunch of other hunters to hunt Bruce. There's about 10 minutes of film left, so you could pretty much imagine what happens here. Whoa! And the thing is, Bruce can't be everywhere at once, so much like the majority of the film, the hunters just end up killing each other. And I don't mean like intentionally, so they've got a bigger chance of killing Bruce. I mean like they're that moronic, they accidentally blow each other up. Honestly, this montage, it just becomes really stupid and obnoxious. Like, you see people being headshot, you don't even know if it's Bruce or not. Apart from this one guy with the flamethrower that Bruce noob tubes, just killing him instantly. Bruce makes it to the original cabin where the hunters all spawned at, and it is so obvious that the confrontation between Neil and Bruce isn't really happening. They've obviously had Bruce like stand behind a green screen and then like tried to color correct him to make him look like he's in the same room, but the lighting's all off. It looks so unnatural.
Mr. Malone.
Fuck.
Anyway, Neil wants to kill Bruce, obviously. He pulls his gun out to fire, and we're meant to believe that in the same space of time, Bruce reaches behind him, pulls out his assault rifle, and launches a grenade the exact same time that he was already pulling the trigger on his gun. And Bruce miraculously survives. Out of all the films, it has probably the most abrupt ending. But look, there's Bruce Willis and there's some CGI fire. Finally, Dark Souls reference. See, the thing is, I don't know what to give this film. It should be an S tier for how much of an accidental comedy it is, especially with him like wandering through the woods. But it should also be an F tier for absolutely nothing happening until the last 10 minutes of the film. You know what? I can't give it an S. I'll give it an A. A tier. Deadlock. Now, this film, I couldn't actually find anywhere to watch it, even with a VPN. It wasn't available on Netflix, Amazon. There was nowhere I could find it, like, legally to watch. But for a change, it looks like in this film, Bruce was playing a villain, which, you know, seems interesting. But with audio mixing like this from the trailer, I don't think I'm missing out on much.
I did not think I'd see your ass in work today. We come from tougher cloth than that.
I haven't seen it, but F tier for audio engineering. Fortress. The weird thing about this film, it has an abhorrently low score on IMDb, but on Amazon Prime, it's nearly 5 stars, which makes me think, why is this film so positively received? And then I realized watching the trailer, it's produced by the same guy that did The Irishman. So this was produced by the same guys that did Robert De Niro walking outside and pretending to kick someone in the head. I mean, it's got the same producer, so it's got to be good, right? Well, the film begins bizarrely with a guy shilling cryptocurrency in what looks to be a porn tier acting advert.
Years ago, we set out to architect a cryptocurrency exchange that would elevate the trajectory of global finances forever.
I want to say as well, why did they choose the impact meme for the header at the... You could have chose any other font, man. Now, a weird thing about this film, a lot of the films I've talked about, they have this like very dark, gritty color palette. But this film, being set in a jungle resort, is actually the complete opposite. The colors are incredibly saturated, almost like that very good TV show that I talked about. The only problem is the saturation is so strong, it kind of makes everything look sickly, and all the characters look like they're suffering with jaundice. Now, the plot of this film, Bruce Willis plays the dad of the crypto shill that we talked about earlier. He comes under attack and is stalked by like this group of mercenaries that basically want to steal his Bitcoin wallet. That is the plot of the film. To steal someone's Bitcoin wallet. You've got this great scene of like the son explaining to Bruce how like the whole crypto world works, and his response is the exact same as mine.
You heard of cryptocurrency, Dad? Digital assets. You've heard of Bitcoin, right?
Yeah, sure.
Well, I want to show you how our marketplace streams transactions in real time, just like a stock exchange.
Glad you're excited.
Eventually, the security team guarding the resort start to get killed off one by one. And then you kind of realize, wait, we're only halfway through this film and only now things are happening. Also, one of the guys that breaks in who like kills one of the guards, he just stands there out in the open to smoke a cigar. And unsurprisingly, he gets killed. Now, one thing I do genuinely like about this film, Bruce is in it a lot. For most of the films, it's a cameo role. He'll appear at the start and then at the very end, maybe some like stuff in between where he doesn't really do anything. But here, he's pretty much in like most scenes. And in comparison, he actually does stuff. You know, in Apex, he was just wandering around the woods with like royalty-free ukulele, but here he actually fights and kills a fair few people. Now, that being said, there still is some pretty stupid concepts in this film. Like, for example, there's a guy that has a shotgun fully loaded. He attaches this like RGB light on the end of it, which looks like something you'd buy from Wish, and apparently that then transforms his shotgun into a taser, even though it was loaded with buckshot anyway. Like, if it was beanbag or salt rounds or something, I'd get that, but like well, why does an RGB light suddenly transform the gun? Another thing I noticed, which is kind of inevitable with how many of these films are made, you'll notice that a lot of these actors were actually in previous films that I've talked about. Like, for example, that drug bust film I talked about, the bad guy of that is now actually one of the good side characters helping Bruce.
Like a tattoo. Run around barefoot.
We are so fucked. And the main good guy in that film is now the main bad guy. So essentially what they've done is they've rewrote the film, changed a couple things, and then just swapped the characters around. I'm just happy that things actually happen in this film because, for example, that good army guy that I talked about is like a sergeant and he goes off on a little bit of a kill streak. Like when he takes out this guy holding an RPG, and when it cuts to his perspective, it's obviously just like an overlay that they added, like a sniper scope in a video game. One thing that really disappoints me, he kills him and you expect that cliche thing where, you know, he dies and then the RPG fires off and it goes off in the sky and explodes. It does that, but before you see any of that, it cuts away. So the only thing you get to see is this like terrible green screen explosion in the sky. Now keep in mind, the mercenaries that are invading the camp, they're highly trained and they have killed everyone that they've met. Everyone, even people that have helped and exchanged information. But when they find Bruce, even though they have no reason to and don't know who he is, they hear him out.
Where are your friends, Mr. Michaels?
I love this scene, man. To which Bruce unironically pulls the gag, look up at the ceiling, and they all, this is like 6 people, and they all get disarmed by him.
Up there.
Put the weapons down. Slowly.
Gotcha.
I think there's some like betrayal in the last act. I mean, who cares? Bruce finds the bad guy, shoots him, he falls in the lake. The film ends. And then they did an after-credits scene where the bad guy survives because Bruce shot him in the chest and he was wearing like a flak vest. I love it so much, man, because they're implying that they will ever want to make a sequel of this film. Overall, B tier. It's a great film. It's not as comedically bad as Apex. It's a pretty competent film, all things considered. American Siege. This is another Bruce Willis film, also co-starring Monka Hairline. The film's set in Georgia, so everyone don't like this. I sleep with my sister. Gosh. Bruce plays a cop in this film with the local town doctor being taken hostage. The thugs, in return for releasing the doctor, want one of their friends from jail released. Honestly, this film, I don't know why, I just didn't vibe with it at all. It might have just been like the fatigue of watching so many Bruce Willis films back to back, but so much of this film is just them storming around a house while Bruce Willis kind of just waits by a tree for stuff to happen. The thing is, he isn't even the one to break into the house. It's some like weird Black Ops unit that are introduced like 5 minutes prior. And also, did I forget to mention that the SWAT commander has a toothpick in his mouth all the time? I don't know why. The reason why I don't like this film is because Bruce is in it so little. I mean, unironically, for like a nearly 2-hour film, he's probably in it for about 7 minutes. It's only really in the climax of the film where he comes back to actually do anything, while he just has voices in his head of like people roasting him.
Stay in your lane, Sheriff.
Are you trying to be a hero now?
You keep masturbating, you're gonna go blind!
Also, shoutouts to this guy who fires his gun and the sound effects don't even line up with the muzzle flash. They didn't care at this point. I don't really care about this film. There's some plot twist where the doctor was actually a bad guy all along because he was like a drug kingpin running some kind of operation. And the people that have taken him hostage are like misunderstood and they were wrongly convicted. Something like that. Bruce sees them, lets them go. I don't really care. Honestly, giving this one an E because it was just, yeah, very boring, very bland, very predictable. Gasoline Alley. Now, this film is the first in a while to not be set in a factory or a jungle, so it's refreshing. Bruce here plays yet another detective, with his partner this time being Luke Wilson, the brother of real-life actor Owen Wilson. But just because a slightly recognizable name is attached does not mean this film is good. You've got really weird choices in this film, like there's an office block with a bunch of detectives' nameplates outside the doors, but the nameplates obviously aren't real and they've just been like CGI'd in. You could have easily got these printed off and engraved for like $50. Also, this is really weird, right? I actually think that these films I've been talking about are part of a greater Bruce Willis cinematic universe. There's a scene in this film where they're shooting a movie within the movie, and the film is called American Siege, the film that I literally just talked about prior. This film is a murder mystery though, so compared to the last film, there's a lot more talking and a lot less shooting. I mean, I don't really mind it because the action in these films has become so mindless that unless it's Apex Predator, something just so abhorrently goofy, it's kind of uninteresting. But again, we fall into that problem of having a film that Bruce is barely in.
Hi, I'm Bruce Willis.
I get it. This is one of the last few films he appeared in before he completely retired, so he'd appear in films less and less. But he's the poster boy of this film, but he's in it for about 2.5 minutes, which is literally false advertising.
That's not fraud. I would call that false advertising.
Now, the main plot of this film is a guy is framed for murders that he didn't actually commit, and he needs to go and prove his innocence. But unfortunately, the two detectives don't believe him. But you know what, guys? It's not all bad. At least they got Mike Ehrmantraut from Breaking Bad.
Ehrmantraut, security consultant.
Unfortunately, much like Breaking Bad, he's killed off here. Just, he's not the one in the car.
What's your hurry, Bill?
So stupid. Let me die in peace.
But yeah, plot twist of this film, Bruce is basically a bad guy working with the villains so he can get a cut and frame this guy. The film climaxes with this shootout in the catacombs, and it just looks like Sicario, but bad. I've noticed so much with these films, what they do is they'll get concepts or scenes from like top viewed YouTube videos that have got like 10 to 20 million views, and they copy it, but just make all the wrong choices to make it terrible. Also, this final gunfight is definitely, hands down, the most inconsistent I've seen throughout all of these films. Sometimes the bullets penetrate surfaces, sometimes they don't. Sometimes there's muzzle flash, sometimes there isn't. Sometimes there's just delay on the muzzle flash. Honestly, this fight perfectly emulates every single Battlefield 2042 server I've ever been on. So anyway, our hero, the falsely accused guy, he burns all the drug dealers' money, and Bruce Willis as well. He burns Bruce Willis. I love as well, with the money, you can just tell that it's like prop paper money with how flat it looks. You don't see Bruce Willis die, but he kind of just, he's left in the fire, and there's no like after credits scene, so we can assume that he did. I did watch until the very end, guys, and I'm sad to say there is no post-credits scene. All in all, pretty boring film, pretty forgettable. There's nothing really that stands out here. D tier.
Let me just slide in here.
A Day to Die. Now, this one's a bit higher on the scale, being a 4.6 on IMDb. That's not good. That's like Texas Chainsaw Massacre Netflix bad.
It was a freak show. Try anything and you're canceled, bro.
But compared to all the 3s and 2s we've been seeing, this is like Oscar bait. I'm a little bit worried though, like watching some of the companies involved in this film, they look more like shell companies where people hide their money as opposed to actual companies. Hood River Entertainment and Hive 5 Films. Is that just a stock image? Also, these intro credits are some of the worst I've ever seen. There's just like random screen shaking for no reason and then zooming in on paused frames. They even do these zoom-ins on already close-ups, so it just looks so obnoxious. Now, apparently in this film, a bunch of mercenaries have taken everyone in a school hostage, and the response team are terrible, forgetting to bring their equipment and sometimes even shooting hostages.
Watch out for civilians. Get the fuck out of here! Can't see shit.
I like how he's the only one to complain about not being able to see when the rest of the squad have their goggles on their helmet and they just see fine. The thing is that I don't want to dunk on this film. It probably is the most ambitious film yet, but with the smallest budget. There's these green screen explosions that looks like they just did like a YouTube to MP4 converter. Like, there's a helicopter, and if you squint really closely, you could probably just about make out the watermark that they used for the trial version. They do try practical effects. There's a bit where this guy gets shot, and they try to emulate, you know, like a blood splatter, like a really gory death, but it just looks like the guy was dusty as hell when they killed him. I've seen these videos on TikTok of people, like, going on, like, a public train, taking the seats off and cleaning them. It looks like that. Now, you're probably wondering, where is Bruce in this film? I'm not really sure. He was in the opening. He's meant to be like a police chief or a SWAT commander. You see him for the opening credits, giving a few orders out. Then he kind of just disappears. The only real input we have is when he meets with a gang leader halfway through the film, and you find out that Bruce is actually corrupt. That's the B story that doesn't really ever get mentioned until the end. But the A story, our main character, SWAT hero guy from the opening, that dusty guy that he smoked, was one of the gang leader's henchmen. So now he's in debt to the gang. The first thing he's tasked with is to go to a drug dealer's house and kill him. Now, I couldn't help but draw parallels to the film Upgrade here, where this guy goes into a house and there's like a fist fight, and it's really well choreographed. They have that idea, but none of the fight choreography. Meanwhile, Bruce does this public speech about how essentially he's terrible at his job and he's got people killed. And that is the reason why you should vote for him.
Well, a lot of people have died on my watch, so you can print that.
Anyway, the hero guy, what he does throughout the background of the film, he gets his old squad together from the intro, and instead of working for the gang, he wants to take them down so they can't extort people anymore. They go to kill him, only to be caught 5 seconds later, and the gang leader has this bizarre thought of like, you know, he could kill them right now, but instead he just doesn't.
Bro, you going soft?
Use your head.
Thing is, I agree with this, like, unnamed random henchman guy. You do have every reason to kill them. You know, if it was the henchman instead being sympathetic and, you know, saying something like, we're in too deep, man. But no, like, why would the main bad guy suddenly ever change a heart? Anyway, they escape because, of course, they do. There's still, like, 20 minutes of film left. And the blood effects are the worst I've seen yet. Like, I'm not even joking when I say this. There's, like, a green outline on some of the blood splatters. Like, they forgot to chroma key the green screen out. Now, they eventually meet with the gang leader again, and they come to a truce. If both of them team up together, they can take down Bruce Willis, who's the corrupt cop. So there's a shootout between the honest cops that don't know what's going on, Bruce Willis, and then the squad. Now, all right, I do want to say I've attacked this film a lot, but these scenes are pretty good. Most of the main cast get killed here really unceremoniously. They're just like sniped or shot in the head. You don't even know where from. It's pretty gritty. Look, I don't know who any of these people are, and believe me, I'm not going on IMDb to look up their credits names, but I appreciate it. And then Bruce, for some reason, his character, he starts to go around killing his own cops to like cover up his tracks, even though they don't know that he's dirty. But conveniently, someone at the time opens up TikTok and starts filming him doing it. He goes to show the other officers, who then realize, oh my God, he's the real actor, Bruce Willis. And then there's this bizarre scene, right? They pull up into his office. Bruce kind of knows what's going to happen. He opens his drawer and there's a gun in there with a holster. He takes the gun out the holster and you think, oh my God, what's he going to do? Is he going to use it on himself? Is he going to have like a final shootout in his office? But then he takes it out the holster and then he kind of just puts the gun away. And then they put their hands on his shoulders like, yeah, we got you, buddy. Like, why even show that gun? Thing is, the film was pretty boring. It was lackluster, but that shootout was good. I really do like that. And the bizarre gun thing, it's kind of been living rent-free in my head a little bit. I still do not understand what went behind that cinematography. You know what? Game of Thrones Red Wedding had nothing on that final act. B tier. Now, I am not joking when I say that I've talked about so many Bruce Willis films, and this video is going to be way too long already. There are still 8 more Bruce Willis films that are like, you know, still being produced right now. He's filmed all of his parts. He's in retirement, but they're not out yet. And I want to say thank God, because I do not want to touch another one of these garbage below 5-star IMDb films ever again. Anyways, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope Bruce Willis has a good retirement, because at the end of the day, these films are garbage, but he's just getting that bag, and I respect it, even though I hate these films. All right, see you guys later. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.